Sweet. We're live again. Imagine. Modern Relics Podcast. I'm Angel. He's Lucky. We're back. What's cracking, dude?
How's it going? Not a whole lot. Well, actually, I've had a whole lot. It's been a weird week, but yeah, I'm doing good though. I'm in high spirits. I think last week I was a little kind of like, a little humdrum about just energy level, but today I've I got some good popping energy going on. I think it's due to a surge of testosterone and adrenaline that I've had over the course of the last like 5 days. But real quick, I wanted to kind of share something with you. I hired a new girl at the shop.
Sure.
And she does like eyebrows and microblading kind of stuff, and then she also does areola and nipple reconstruction for like breast cancer survivors and stuff.
Gotcha.
Which is really cool. But another service that she provides is kind of a tattoo lightening. I always say that I have to like pronounce it because it always sounds like cracking lightning.
Right.
But it's actually lightening, where it's a solution that comes from a lab. It's not like she doesn't mix it in a pot like a witch or anything. But it's
more snake venom.
I have newt. Right. But it's like a saline solution that has like a bunch of different extracts, like orange and lemon extracts and stuff like that. But it works as a way to kind of break up pigment under the skin and actually force it out instead of absorbing it in like laser does.
Sure.
It actually forces it out the other way. And so I got a whole bunch done up on this guy up here, and you can see I don't know if you can see that, but it's all healing and scabby and nasty. And you're supposed to let it do that. You're supposed to just no ointment or anything, just dry heal it and let it scab and get all gross. And it was spicy. Like there's a bit of a bite to it. And I would imagine that it's the citrus or whatever. But,
right. Eye of newt, whatever.
Right. Yeah. Tongue of bat. But yeah, it was spicy, but it seems to already be working. I'm still covered in like scabbiness, but I can already kind of tell that it's working, which is great. I eventually want to get a big cover up here. Yeah. And it's really awesome for me because I do a lot of cover ups at my job, and it's become one of my specialties. However, it's a lot easier if it's a really difficult one, really dark or big one. I can go, hey, here's your options, and we can do a really good job with that. Or here's a whole bunch more options if you go see her for a session and come see me after that. Yeah. And it'll lighten it up. It'll give us way more options. And so it's been pretty cool. I'm actually really excited to see how this turns out. But
no big scar tissue patches, just little scabs so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So real like flat ones, no buildups or anything. But
nice, dude, that's awesome.
But yeah.
So how long is this?
I think Wednesday.
How long has this sorceress been employed?
About I think 2 or 3 weeks now.
Oh,
and
wow.
I got myself on the board, and I was like, hey, put me on the board. She goes, oh, really? And she's all nervous. And I was like, I guided her through some steps because it's tattooing. She tattoos on all this stuff into you. So but she's not a tattoo artist outside of like cosmetic and stuff. So there were certain things like she was going to shave me, and she was just like very, very slowly shaving my arm. Just, I think out of nerves of shaving the boss, but also probably just pure inexperience. But, and she's just shaving me, and I was looking down, I was like, that's adorable, give me that. And I took it out of her hand and just went, whip, 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 and it was a funny moment. But yeah, so I got to give her some like tips and tricks on angles and depth and dip time and all these different types of things, and it was really appreciative. But it was also a good training lesson for her to be able to confidently go into other clients. She's been doing it for about 6 months, but she's never done it to a tattoo artist before. So this was her first time of maybe getting some feedback of that might be beneficial to her. So that the training might not have given her due to the fact that they're not also tattoo artists.
Yeah, it's always sad when when you can hear the power supply change pitches when they're going deep, just wow. Yeah, I've been on the receiving end of that twice. Well, that's cool, man.
Yeah, I
It's
just thought that would
exciting.
be fun to share. Yeah,
No,
fun
good.
to share a little thing.
Go check him out. Artful Dodger Tattoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're in the inland Pacific Northwest, come see me.
Love it. And here, all this time, I thought the renewed energy was all surrounding the fact that you got a shake weight. But hey, you know. Somebody said that to me. They were like, I think it was at work. They were like, wow, you look really good. I was like, got a shake weight. What can I say? Thanks. Straight face. They were just like, wait, what? No. Is that a joke?
Does those things actually work?
Yeah. Picked up a shake weight at a garage sale a couple of weeks ago. It's paying dividends already, you know. Oh my God. So yeah, week on my side's been bananas, dude. Spring is gone. It was like 70-ish degrees, and then it's like, hey, 92 degrees is here. Are you ready?
Already?
Oh yeah.
Are you oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It starts at around 80 degrees, and then by 1 p.m., like as the sun's like just past highest point and starting to set, it'll crawl up to 90, 92, and then it drops off right after sunset. It's like, fucking afternoon sun is here, starting to heat up.
I can't say that I'm not a little jealous because we are in the North Idaho.
Yeah.
Spring season, which is half winter, half spring all the time, right? Like my daughter's out playing softball and it hailed and snowed and was windy and was sunny all in the same game, And
she got a sunburn in a hailstorm, but that's how it goes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So and it just cannot get above 60. Like it's trying when the sun comes out, but like, and 60 is nice, but it's not like I'm not busting out the shorts yet.
No,
like,
for sure. I like up to 100 degrees. When it gets to 101 and up, it's hot. Up to 100, it's like, it's okay. But yeah, it's here. It was like, move over. I'm here now. I'm like, holy crap. And then just starting a new role with new stuff over at Redacted. And it's been quite a learning journey going back into all of the deep inside of technology pieces that I get to work with now, as opposed to outside of or strategic thought around them. So it's good perspective, but it's also like, you go back in and you're like, oh, that's right. I got to interface with a bunch of really awesome people and a few booger eaters. You know what I mean? You're just like, we're back, baby. So it's been an interesting week, but yeah, the weather is definitely turning. So
that's good.
So we got a lot to go over this week, bro. We got a lot happened.
Yeah, it was a pretty hefty week of weird.
It really was.
Like we don't have really a normal story this week at all.
No.
So,
although
like it's not.
I am trying to develop like an ongoing story that I'd like to revisit every 4 or 5 episodes, where we can kind of like do a series dedicated to. This is the first time you're hearing about it, so I'm not going to get into it too deeply. But like normally we kind of center around something we can fire off on, but it's just been left, right, body blow, headshot, especially in the news.
Yeah.
So we had some Title IX stuff come up.
Yeah.
This
which I'm particularly interested in due to the fact that I have a sports playing daughter.
Yeah.
And so, who is 17 and, and has actually personally met Riley Gaines.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, she's actually one of her heroes. But all right, anyway, you hit me up this week and said, hey, did you see this?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I haven't. And he sent me over the information, and we'll get into it later, but I got kind of sidetracked with life in a weird way and did not have a chance to actually go over it. Please walk me through this, as it absolutely pertains to my personal life, and I would love to hear, because you seem to be pretty astounded by the information.
I knew this was going in for discussion. I did not realize how deep the Biden-Harris team was going to take this. They went way overboard. So what I'm going to do is read the fact sheet from the U.S. Department of Education's 2024 Title IX Final Rule Overview. And where I can skip, I will try to, because it's a pretty hefty document. But each of these segments are worthy of, I guess, repeating or sharing to those that are interested. And if you have kids in school, I mean, maybe this is for you. So it starts with what Title IX is. And if those of you aren't familiar, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 was signed into law 50 years ago. In the decades since, Title IX's protections have paved the way for tremendous strides in education and more for millions of students across the country, and have opened doors for generations of women and girls. In spite of this historic progress, rates of sexual harassment and assault in our nation's schools and colleges remain unacceptably high. Many women see their education derailed because of pregnancy discrimination, and many LGBTQI plus students face bullying and harassment just because of who they are. The Biden-Harris administration believes that the promise of Title IX and education free from sex discrimination remains as vital now as it was when it was first signed into law. So you can imagine they've modernized it a little bit. On April 19th, 2024, the United States Department of Education released its final rule to fully effectuate Title IX's promise that no person experiences sex discrimination in federally funded education. It's a pretty wide net. Before issuing the proposed regulations, the department received feedback on its Title IX regulations as amended in 2020 from a wide variety of stakeholders. The regulations released today draw on the department's engagements with tens of thousands of students, parents, and educators, state government representatives, advocates, lawyers, researchers, and representatives from elementary schools, secondary schools, and post-secondary institutions. After releasing the proposed regulations in July of 2022, the department received and reviewed more than 240,000 comments from the public informing this rulemaking. So the public got to influence the rulemaking. Final regulations will help ensure that all persons, including students and employees, receive appropriate support if they experience sex discrimination in schools, and that schools' procedures for investigating and resolving complaints of sex discrimination are accurate and fair to all involved. The final regulations strengthen several major provisions from the current regulations and provide schools with the information to meet their Title IX obligations, while providing appropriate discretion and flexibility to account for variations in school size, student populations, and administrative structures. The final regulations also provide greater clarity regarding the definition of sex-based harassment, the scope of sex discrimination, including schools' obligations not to discriminate based on sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, pregnancy or related conditions, sexual orientation, and gender identity, and schools' obligations to provide an educational environment free from discrimination on the basis of sex. It goes on to state what the vital protections in students that our nation's schools and clear rules will help meet their obligation and needs. So, here's the final regulations. 1. Require schools to take prompt and effective action to end any sex discrimination in their education programs or activities and to prevent its reoccurrence and remedy its effects. The final regulations promote accountability to fulfill Title IX's non-discrimination mandate by requiring schools to act promptly and effectively in response to information about conduct that reasonably may constitute sex discrimination, including sexual violence and other forms of sex-based harassment. These regulations also require that schools train employees about the school's obligation to address sex discrimination, as well as employees' obligations to notify or provide contact information for the Title IX coordinator.
That's a new job.
That's a new job. Number 2, require schools to provide supportive measures to complainants and respondents affected by their conduct that may constitute sex discrimination, including sexual violence and other forms of sex-based harassment. Under the final regulations, schools are required to offer supportive measures as appropriate to restore or preserve a party's access to the school's education program or activity, or provide support during a school's grievance procedures or the informal resolution process. Supportive measures cannot be unreasonably burdensome to a party and cannot be imposed for punitive or disciplinary reasons. Number 3.
Go back on that last sentence again.
Supportive measures cannot be unreasonably burdensome to a party and cannot be imposed for punitive or disciplinary reasons. Because they say it's not.
Right.
Number 3. Require schools to respond promptly and effectively to all complaints of sex discrimination with a fair, transparent, and reliable process that includes trained, unbiased decision makers to evaluate all relevant and not otherwise impermissible evidence. Final regulations strengthen requirements for schools to conduct reliable and impartial investigations of all sex discrimination complaints. Final regulations maintain several major provisions from the current regulations to ensure consistency for schools while updating required procedures to more effectively protect against sex discrimination in the nation's elementary schools, secondary schools, and post-secondary institutions. The final regulations include the following. All schools must treat complainants and respondents equitably. Sounds good. Title IX coordinators, new job, investigators, decision makers, and facilitators of an informal resolution process must not have a conflict of interest or bias for or against complainants or respondents generally or at an individual complaint or respondent, because that's going to be metered. A school's grievance procedures must include presumption that the respondent is not responsible for alleged sex discrimination until a determination is made at the conclusion of the school's grievance procedures. Also not prescribed. A school's grievance procedures must require adequate notice to the parties of the allegations, dismissal, delays, meetings, proceedings, and determinations. A school's grievance procedures must give the parties an equal opportunity to present and access relevant and not otherwise impermissible evidence, as well as provide a reasonable opportunity for each party to respond to that evidence. The school's decision makers must objectively evaluate each party's relevant and not otherwise impermissible evidence. They keep saying impermissible evidence. The school must
seems to be a theme.
They love saying it. They keep saying it. A school must have a process enabling the decision maker to assess a party's or a witness's credibility when credibility is in dispute and also relevant. For sex-based harassment, complaints involving a student party at a post-secondary institution, this process must include either questioning by the investigator or the decision maker during individual meetings with the party or witness, including questions proposed by each party, or questioning the decision maker during a live hearing, including questions proposed by each party and asked by the decision maker or the party's advisor. This is sounding very much like a tribunal.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like.
In evaluating the party's evidence, a school must use the preponderance of the evidence standard of proof unless the school uses clear and convincing evidence standard in all other comparable proceedings, including proceedings relating to other discrimination complaints, in which case the school may use that standard in determining whether sex discrimination occurred. So they need to set one precedent on their own in a tribunal, and that's the new standard.
That is insane.
Finally, a school must not impose disciplinary sanctions under the Title IX on any person unless it determines at the conclusion of grievances procedures that sex discrimination for which the person was responsible has indeed occurred. Number 4, provide schools with flexibility to adapt the regulation's grievance procedure requirements to their educational communities so that all schools can implement Title IX's promise of non-discrimination fully and fairly in their educational environments. So we need one big precedent in an area where the same school board presides. The department's final regulations will enable all schools to meet their Title IX obligations while providing appropriate discretion and flexibility to account for variations in school size, student population, and administrative structure. For instance, schools that have the option to use a single investigator model and schools may choose to use this model in some, but not all cases, as long as it is clear in their grievance procedures when this model will be utilized. Schools also have the option to offer informal resolution processes for sex discrimination complaints, unless the complaint includes allegations that an employee engaged in sex-based harassment of an elementary school, secondary school, or secondary school student, or unless such a process would conflict with federal, state, or local law. Further, the department's final regulations reflect a framework that accounts for differences.
There's our loophole, though.
Yep. Further, the department's final regulations reflect a framework that accounts for differences in the age, maturity needs, and level of independence of students in various educational settings. The final regulations include some requirements that apply in all educational settings, as well as specialized requirements that are tailored to the unique situation of sex-based harassment complaints involving post-secondary students. This framework is designed to ensure that all elementary and secondary schools and post-secondary institutions provide for the prompt and equitable resolution of sex discrimination complaints in their respective settings. I'm going to glaze through a couple of these. Protect students, employees, and applicants from discrimination based on pregnancy or related conditions. Same rules, specified discrimination. Prohibit discrimination against LGBTQI plus students, employees, and others. The rule prohibits discrimination and harassment based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex characteristics in federally funded education programs, applying the reasoning of the Supreme Court's ruling in Bostock versus Clayton County, which I also read, where it's the spirit of the law, but I encourage those that are interested to read it. Here's what you're waiting for. Protect people from harm when they're separated or treated differently based on sex in school. The final regulations clarify that a school must not separate or treat people differently based on sex in a manner that subjects them to more than de minimis harm, except in limited circumstances permitted by Title IX. The final regulations further recognize that preventing someone from participating in school, including in sex-separate activities, consistent with their gender identity, causes that person more than de minimis harm. This general non-discrimination principle applies except in the limited circumstances specified by statute, such as in the context of sex-separate living facilities and sex-separate athletic teams. The final regulations do not include new rules governing eligibility criteria for athletic teams. We get into some protect you from retaliation student to student. We get into support the right of parents and guardians to act on behalf of their elementary and secondary school children, which states the final regulations support the rights of parents and guardians to act on behalf of a minor student, including when seeking assistance under Title IX and participating in a school's Title IX grievance procedures, save for the tribunal precedent that may have already been set, which they could then apply as a standard to the Title IX grievance process, which might not include parents.
Because, you know, they don't have a very recent history of doing all manner of things without contacting the parents down into the grade school level. Like, I just read a story maybe yesterday about like a dad who found out that they were a school counselor, a principal, a teacher, and a therapist that he didn't even know existed in the school all decided that his daughter was a boy and were transitioning her at third grade, transitioning her without the parents' knowledge. So this is actually happening all over the place. So this will absolutely apply. So go ahead. But
here's the last point that kind of puts a burr in my boot. The final provision is prohibit schools from sharing personal information. The final regulations prohibit schools from disclosing personally identifiable information they obtain through complying with Title IX, with limited exceptions, such as when they have prior written consent or when the information is disclosed to the parent of a minor, save for loophole with precedent. There's much, much more to this, and holy shit.
Yeah.
That, to me, at first, like, you get through the first couple paragraphs and you're like, word salad, delicious. Then you really get into it and you have the new school appointed position. You have a single person that could be acting as an investigator or a multitude. You have loopholes for grievances for and against employees, including protections codified by finally prohibiting from sharing personal information obtained through Title IX.
So basically, the wave of sexual misconduct that we've seen skyrocketed in the last couple of years from teachers and their students is now going to fall under a tribunal of whether or not it'll even be allowed to be released.
It also calls into question what exactly is discrimination, and in my mind, that is going to basically enable a witch hunt for conservative kids.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. So there's two things. I mean, right off the bat, let's hope that, because is this a federal law, obviously, coming from the Biden administration?
April 19th, earlier this week.
So did Congress pass it, or was it just a decree through the Biden administration?
This is the U.S. Department of Education, so it's a decree through the administration.
Right. So this is not even attributed to our judicial system or our congressional system at all to create this law.
Nope.
So then what it does is it falls under the 10th Amendment, and each state will be able to defy this on the state level and be able to do that. And I hope they all do.
Me too.
This is a bizarre situation where it's one of those things where they've taken something that I was pretty much against, the Title IX of equity, of making everything equal regardless of merit or whatever the case may be. And there was probably some benefits to it, but overall it was kind of a sweeping kind of socialist program within the school system.
Right.
Title IX was not very popular, but it wasn't also our biggest battle. So, but now what they've done is that they've made Title IX so bad by removing, the elements of Title IX that were actually protecting girls, and completely wiped that out. So now it's going to become a target, and I think that was the intent.
Yeah, are you familiar with the meme of the Spider-Man pointing to all the other Spider-Men? They're all pointing like that's what they've enabled Title IX to enact, with exclusivity around how these cases are handled and the information that's disclosed therein by a select group of administrators that may or may not have bias based on a precedent set by a tribunal that they appoint.
Right. And then the tribunal will also not be held accountable, because then they will point at the administration, and the administration will then point at this group. And they already do that within the public education system. We, battling it here, on a local level, anytime we try to get accountability, they're like, well, that's not our purview. That's them. That's accounting. Or then that's the administration over here.
Yep.
You're talking to the wrong group, and no one has the answer as to where it started, where it began, why this even got implemented in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's a volley of different ideas. It doesn't have to be Title IX stuff. It's all over the board, from the curriculum to the budget to anything. They
Everywhere.
will never take accountability. They will just keep pointing, and it's designed that way. It's designed so that nobody has to take the kick to the teeth when people get mad about it. That it's just, oh, well, that wasn't us. We were told what to do by them. And they were like, oh, well, we were told to do it, but in the round robin it goes. And that's what you just read to me, a structure of design exactly for that process.
This is the blueprint. This is the blueprint. Yeah. This is the framework. What kills me is, like, I'm with you on the Title IX premise. Like, it's ridiculous that it was codified based on reasons.
Yeah. I think it was the reason the education, the Department of Education was even designed to begin with, was because of Title IX.
Yeah, and the spirit of it is palatable. Like, nobody likes discrimination, and they're okay, cool, so we have at least a light rule book where we have some provisions and some protections that are exposed and under the authority of parents in the case of minors.
Right.
They took that same idea and said, well, the spirit of Bostock versus Clayton County now allows us to change the rules. Bostock versus Clayton County is one of 3 lawsuits, and I'm going to paraphrase this, so I encourage people to read it, because subject to this not being entirely accurate here. It was 3 separate lawsuits. 2 of the folks that brought the lawsuit to Clayton County have since died, and their estates are still chasing rulings. And it was all three of which were separated from employment. I think 2 out of 3 of them in cases where they were 10 or more years employed. And one mentioned that they came out of the closet and were gay and got immediately fired for it. The other was a transgender situation, same result. And I can't quite remember the third one of the party that's not deceased, that's still alive. Same result. So the U.S. Supreme Court kind of took this up and then laid out a precedent that said, look, the question that you're asking the Supreme Court to rule on is the basis of sex and gender identity. And it's a long, and there's 30 fucking pages of their ruling on this. But in spirit, what we're talking about is the basis of firing somebody because of a discriminatory reason. And that's what we're ruling on in this case. So they're leveraging the spirit of the ruling in the same way I would support the spirit of Title IX for something that defends against discrimination, and a bit perverting it so that they could apply a laundry list of craziness with secret society tribunal stuff that allow for a very ambiguous framework that may or may not allow equitable trial by fires to both the defendant and the plaintiff in the school setting. And there's absolutely zero accountability other than because we adopted a precedence that needs to be set or because we said so through all of it. And to me, that's going to lead to an incredible witch hunt for those that adopt this as the framework in federally funded education systems, starting with, I presume, them hiring this new, I lost my place on it, the new position of essentially investigator, right?
Right.
And to me, this is patently absurd.
Yeah. But what will happen is you're going to get 2 or 3 high-profile cases, probably 2, that hit the national circuit. And then what it's going to do is, because the parents weren't aware of this, because if you're not paying attention, this stuff goes under the radar and they just don't even, and it's complicated, so they don't really recognize it for what it is. And then once it hits the national news, and then they're like, wait a minute, that's what that meant? My kids are going to be subject to that. If they think that 2020 was a wave of homeschoolers leaving the public school system,
it's about to get much worse than that.
Yeah, absolutely true. It's going to gut the roles, the role of the the word I'm looking for, attendance roles for public school systems across the country, if this is allowed to really flare up in the way that it looks like it wants to, the way it's written. That it's looking for nails. It's a hammer looking for nails is basically what it is. And so what it's going to do is it's going to create a situation where some kids are going to get really harmed and damaged by this, and parents are going to get thrown under the bus,
and or some educators insert a 4-year-old 5-year-old story of Brett Weinstein and Evergreen College.
Right.
Like this is the new normal now. If this framework's adopted, of course.
Kid wears an American flag T-shirt. Somebody takes a problem with it. That goes through tribunal. They take the word of the kid who was offended, or the teacher that was offended, or whatever, and that's it. That's done. The kid's out, done and done and done. So we're going to start seeing, and it obviously, like I said before, it's intentionally antagonistic. They're doing this on purpose. So then what they do is that kid gets kicked out. It makes headlines all over the place. Irate, rage bait. But it's going to gut the school system. But what it does is it also, because of it gutting the school system, what it does is then creates a crisis. And to fix the crisis, what they'll do is they'll start the rollout of, well, we need the funding for the other kids that can't do all the private schools and stuff. So we got to start putting some regulations on who can actually go do homeschooling. We're going to do a whole lot of homeschooling regulation. We're going to force your kids back into public schools because we'll start trickling that down through the states. So
yeah, they'll be
this is
inadmissible for college application if they were not through an accredited, federally funded school program with a
right.
obscenely bloated administrative staff now starving for
Absolutely.
income sources.
My daughter's homeschooled, but she plays sports for a local high school.
Right.
And so that being said, she's going to be, fortunately, she's a senior and this is her last year and I won't have to deal with it anymore. But future generations, and I know a lot of homeschool kids who play sports through the local school systems. Man, this is just going to, especially in like kind
if adopted, it already makes you a villain for sex separate sports teams.
You're already kind of primed for that. Like it's already ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
All they got to do is stamp it and it's out the door. And so, this is dangerous. But the ultimate solution is once again, abolish the Department of Education. You're done, and it goes away. This is all trickled down from bureaucratic, non-elected bodies of people who are creating law and legislation when they do not have the right to. And it's all coming down from these department heads and these departments that do not have the authority to do what they are implementing, much like the ATF, much like all the other agencies that are three-letter names or departments of this or that all end up giving us these insane structures of rule that aren't actually legal structures. But what if you fight against it? What happens? You get told that you're a terrorist, and so
someone on a podcast recently, and I've listened to like 6 simultaneously in different parts, so forgive me. It might have been like Tucker Carlson and on Joe Rogan recently, because they put out like a 3-hour discussion last week. I think it was Tucker that mentioned.
I haven't had a chance to see that yet.
I'm like an hour into it, but I'm pretty sure it was Tucker said that some astounding statistic, like there's 340 million Americans or something like that, and there are 12 million government employees. It's just like, I mean, if that's even remotely close to true, that's way too big, right? Like that's your department of this and your sub department of that and all the things you just mentioned. And it's very much the way it operates now. It's true. Yeah. So I looked at that and I thought, Jesus, like now what? And then I read it and I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then I reread it and I'm like, this looks like a witch hunt. Then I sent it to you and I'm like, we got to talk about this. Like, what the hell is going on here? Yeah.
So the here locally, just for a microcosm of it, like within our local school system, the Coeur d'Alene School District, like, and just all across the state, and it's, they get some state funding. Most of their funding comes through county taxes and property taxes and subdivision taxes and the lottery and stuff like that. They get a lot of funding from all over the place, and they mismanage it, but that's a totally different story, right? But what their state funding comes from is how many butts are in seats.
Yeah.
So they do the proverbial head count of yearly attendance, people coming in and head counts, right? And then that gets sent to the state level for them to budget in to determine how much money they're going to get. Well, with the boom of people who've moved here, like 25,000 to 30,000 people within the last 4 years, which is end over end way, way more than we normally get of the 2,000 to 3,000 per year, right? So, I mean, it's an insane boom that we've had here. So they were all like, ooh, we're going to have way more kids. They are down 500 students per year, year after year since 2020. Every year. And they're like, they can't figure it out. They're like, what is happening? And we're like, you're happening. The schools are absolutely horrible.
The ideological rift is that you are the culprit. Like you are at fault here. You have put yourself in this place. And those that are way more excited about pulling kids out of school so they're not saturated in ideology is manifesting in the 500 delta year over year that you're seeing up there now. So
we've had 4 new Christian charter schools pop up in the last 2-3 years. And it's an answer to this, 4 of them. And it's been an answer to this
1.3 schools for every 12 months are popping up as a result of this.
Yeah. And when it's brought to their attention and this is said to them out loud, they're like, no, it can't be that. It's that the people that are moving here, they're retirement people.
That must be it.
And they don't have kids with them. And they're like,
not simple census data one could easily get.
Exactly. And also, could we not just all agree that this area has always been a retirement area? Mm-hmm. It's always been a retirement area. There's always been an influx of retirees coming here. It's no more than it's ever been. And in fact, more families have migrated here from California, Oregon, and Washington in the last 5 years than ever before. So there's an enormous amount more children and kids in this area, but they're not going to your public schools, and you don't want to admit as to why. Mm-hmm. And now the federal government and the Department of Education has just now added a whole new layer where you're going to lose more, and you're going to lose more money, and it's going to bankrupt the schools. I mean, we just did a $25 million for 2-year levy, which we all fought against, but they threatened all the parents and the teachers saying, you'll lose all the music, sports, and arts. We just need this money. And so the community buckled and actually gave them their money after the 3rd attempt to pass this levy. And then when it happened, and it finally passed, and out of pure pressure onto the community, within 4 months of them getting their money, they were already $6 million in the hole. They're like, we don't know what. Yeah. After getting $25 million, it's the the most in the entire state. I would
venture a guess that their administrative staff levels went up after that was signed. Just a hunch. Yeah.
And they were like, no, nobody's going to get bonuses. But what they did is they all took the COVID money. They all took the CARES Act money.
Yeah.
And like absolute morons, which should be telling as to why these people are even in charge of education at all. But they took one-time expenditure money. So you're getting this chunk of money, and you got 3 of them. So you get this chunk of money, this chunk of money, and this chunk of money. Now, if you were getting one-time money and you knew that it wasn't going to be rolling in all the time, would you, in any capacity, take on a whole bunch of curriculum that has monthly costs? Like a whole bunch of monthly costs. Would you hire a bunch of people that would have then monthly costs?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I'd have to phone a friend on this one.
On one-time money. And so when the one-time money dried up, they're like, uh-oh, where are we going to get all the rest of the money? I guess we'll just have to get it out of the property taxes again, which have been just raking people over the coals in this area. These poor retired people are like, I'm going to lose the house that I'm 75 years old. Man, I was hoping to die in this house.
Would you don't put a rule book attached to levied dollars and it's just a tax hike? Like what did you expect, community up there? Think about it. The very first thing I said when we bailed out all of the major banks after the 2008 financial crisis, and then the federal government and the Federal Reserve, which is no more federal than Federal Express, jumped in there. Every year, my wish list for Christmas includes, if only the IRS would audit the Federal Reserve Bank. ... They put 0 restrictions and 0 regulations or 0 attachments, none, no tail at all on the bailout money. And what did you expect would happen? Exactly what I said. I laughed and said, they're going to bonus their top executives. They're going to roll over. That's what they did. All the top echelon folks paid themselves a handsome sum of money, let the financial institutions burn in place. Whatever assets were sold off on the secondary market were sold off to other banks and financial institutions, and they watched it burn from the privacy of a brand new yacht.
Yeah,
Like put some regulations on the school. Okay, cool. Then guess when this money dries up is if we don't see grades turning around, if we don't see X number of receipts for new sports or music equipment, you term limits on the administrative staff and the school heads. If things don't X, Y, and Z turn around on a report card, we need transparent measurables on where this money's going. Nothing. You just rake taxes, you crush people, you take money, and I'm assuming all the points you made is exactly what they did, which was buy a bunch of weird curriculum that has recurring monthly costs and, you know, expensive new toys and all the other bullshit. Like, what do the people expect? We have seen this before in a different industry, but over and over again. That's just the example that comes to mind is the '08 financial crisis. But like,
yeah,
that's.
But then you add on the social layers of this that are
damn near expected.
Yeah, and they're in a financial crisis because of their own doing. In fact, the schools could probably run on a quarter of what they're actually trying to run these schools on. And people are like, you don't know. Yeah, I've got basically my own version of Siri that I call my wife, that she's a absolute like research robot. And so, yeah, she knows the numbers, and she's been digging through the school numbers for years now going, this is craziness. How does this even work? And
I'd be willing to bet,
and forth with her.
Like even the educators, if you were to give them, hey, if you get extra money and new supplies and stuff at the cost of us not being able to hire a bloated administrative staff, but you have to do your own calendaring, year-over-year events and reports, right. Plus minus having to speak for yourself in non-union based education systems or whatever, or chair some committees as a result of extracurriculars is now part of your job, but you get a shitload of money, new supplies, adequate classroom space, and an education system that's going to support you with this funding. I bet you they would all sign up for the extra work. Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have to deal with the administrators? Done. Let's take the tax money that way.
Well, especially that if the incentive is, hey, we got to trim the budget so like egregiously, like just chop it in half. But tell you what, we'll put half. What we're going to do is we're going to take all of the administrators and cut them down. For every 10, you'll get one administrator, and all of their pay. We got to put some of it back into the budget, but what we'll do is we'll give half of it to you guys. We'll give it all to the teachers. You guys always complain that you're not making enough money, but we'll take all of their pay if you're willing to back us on this. Right. And we'll give you each, hey, a $10 raise, like a $10 an hour raise. And watch them all of a sudden, the bent spine and drudgery of their lives of just like, I'm a teacher, these kids are awful, I don't get paid enough, the regular rigmarole that you hear from this, and watch them go, you know what, but for $10 an hour more, I might be a better teacher.
Right.
Which is kind of a sad thing, but really,
what honestly
motivates people? Money.
You know, I've talked to 2 educators on former podcasts before, one of which who's still employed in the Washington education system for hours on tape, and was like, what's the hardest part? And they're like, what we can't discuss with parents. That's becoming the new hot button hard part, is the stuff that we're mandated to not talk to parents about for the activities that go on at schools. And it's getting worse. So yeah, I agree to a point. It's kind of rough that the spines would straighten to that degree, but if it meant less bureaucracy and less forced amendments to Title IX, like we just read, I mean, there has to be a push-pull. You know what I'm saying? There's got to be, there has to be levies attached to dollars on the public education system. Otherwise, they're going to keep raking you.
We've been trying for a while, and what we've been trying to do is create a program at the state level here where the money actually follows the kid instead of a school. and that the money is attached to the child, and that it opens the child to go to whatever school the parents want them to, instead of it being districted the way it is.
Yeah.
And they're terrified of that. The teachers unions and stuff are like, oh, we can't have that. That will take the power out of our hands. And so, which it puts it back in our hands.
Right.
And
it's almost force you to work at a school that kids want to go to. Imagine.
Right. And so then what ends up happening is you get some people who there's two groups of people that ended up, besides the normal people that you would think of like, teachers unions types and people who kind of want state control on things. But two kind of surprising groups, one of them surprising at least, there was a homeschool group that really started pushing back on it, and they were terrified of it just somehow managing to get more state involvement in homeschooling by making them now accountable, like the homeschoolers accountable to the money, instead of just being completely disconnected to it from it, right? So they're like, no, we don't. That puts them in our house. We don't want them in our house. We don't want money. We don't want, and so there was that. It was kind of a surprising, weird turn of events that we're like, whoa, there's a group of homeschoolers that don't want this. And then it was the kind of.
But those aren't state sanctioned educational institutions. Those are privately or federally accredited curriculums that are taught by people that do not require a license at all to teach at home. So there must have been a lost in translation moment there. Unless I'm missing something, which I could be missing. We went to
a couple symposiums on it where there was just some moms that were spooked.
Sure.
And so they were spooking up all the other moms too. And Erin went there and went, that's not what the bill says at all. And she actually brought it and read it. And the lady got real mad at Erin for being there. But, and then, oops, sorry. The other group was the racist guys.
Sure.
That were like, well, no, that means you're going to truck in all the black kids to my white kids' school, and we can't have that. Yeah, and you're just like, oh, you guys, like. So it was
extra Title IX rule book for you guys. The rest of you are dismissed, huh? To please the court.
So yeah, there was that. So
I think where we're barreling toward is a pretty scary spot. And I think if you have kids in school, specifically those that are going to be on a roadmap where they're in school for quite a while, I would really read Title IX. I would really reach out to your state legislator, and I would have some serious emails and serious discussions and invite folks to coffee, talk.
Yeah.
Bring this up, because as this becomes more and more widely adopted, the deterioration of protections for your kids at school or any federally funded institution relating to education is getting worse and worse and worse. And that was a big step. So I just didn't take kindly to what I read and thought we'd share it here. However,
I'm glad you did.
A dude lit himself on fire this week. Maybe more interesting to talk about the title.
Yeah.
What is going on? What happened, dude?
Man, I don't think ever in my life, within the bounds of our borders, our country borders, has it ever reached the news. Like, if I think of somebody self-emulsifying, I think of the Tibetan monk, as most people do, the one who lit himself on fire in Vietnam, and it became the Time Life image that everybody saw, and just the concept of it was so outrageous. But as you get older, you hear that it happens in conflicts around the globe, typically in third world countries and such, but it happens fairly frequently in protest in the Middle East and Southeast Asia and parts of South America, right? So, but not enough for it to, for me to even think about it. It twice in a month we've had it happen within our borders in a month to like Americans.
Yeah.
Like, no, and one of them, the first guy was a soldier who was a pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine soldier who did it in protest, and some believe that he did it in front of some cops because he thought they'd put him out pretty quickly and he'd survive the ordeal. He did not, and it did not. But this guy, and I forget his name. I don't know if
his name's Maxwell Azzarello.
Right, and he had like kind of a following as a travel guy and on social media, and he's seemed like a fairly normal guy as far as like kind of a hippy dippy kind of dude. He had some history with the working with the Clintons in the past, and had a little bit of political action group stuff, but nothing that would indicate this type of action. So he had a fairly normal life, was posting fairly frequently about like travel blog stuff, and then out of nowhere he writes a manifesto basically indicting both sides of the political power system, saying that they're in league and it is all a Kafka trap, and that we are in a situation that we can't get out of. And
yeah, you sent me a video that he did on the kleptocracy.
Yeah,
and like how it's all just a ruse because the powers that be are leveraging modern economics to screw all of us over, and we're just pawns in their Ponzi scheme. Just pretty aggressive stuff, like follow me to learn more kind of thing, and then lights himself on fire this week and kills himself right outside of.
Yeah, not only lights himself on fire, does it in front of the Trump trial,
right
out of the side of the building in front of the Trump trial, like, and it wasn't even, I don't think necessarily because he wasn't pro-Trump by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't even think he was anti-Trump. I think he was anti.
I think he was anti-everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, but he knew that that's where the audience would be.
100%.
He knew that.
According to the police, he walked into the center of the park where protesters were allowed across the street from the courthouse, opened a backpack and threw numerous pamphlets on the ground, then pulled out a canister, poured a liquid accelerant on himself, lit himself on fire, and fell to the ground and just burned himself alive.
Yeah. And, his friend, from early reports were that his friends and the people who knew him were like, this is wildly out of character. We would never have, we have no idea why he did this. But apparently he left a pretty hefty manifesto, which at this point in history, I think we can both agree that I just hate that word now, manifesto. Everyone's got a manifesto.
I think we should write one.
So, okay.
Just saying. I hate it too. But you can't beat them. No, I'm kidding. We've talked about this a lot, right? And I made this comment kind of off air, in our huddle before we went live. But we talked about a kid in your neck of the woods that the feds picked up on the dark places of the internet that was about to go shoot up some churches because he's a self-proclaimed full-fledged member, pledging himself to ISIS or whatever.
Right.
And the story starts with this child wanting to go to church, to partake in church services, be part of a community there. He's looking for something, and he allegedly found it in this thing. But to go from, I want to go here, to I'm being arrested by the FBI because I plan to kill a bunch of people at churches, or in this guy's case, having pretty melancholy lifestyle according to friends and family, and then fallen off the deep end only recently in social media posts to wind up lighting himself on fire in a form of protest with throwing manifesto pamphlets on the ground. What leads somebody that fast, a year or two, from point A to extreme point B?
I'll list it off. First of all, lack of God. Second of all, the education system, and third of all, lack of parenting, and then
all things we have covered on this podcast, by the way. So
led
it's
by the hand guidance.
Yeah. So it's not because we're coming at shit like this from a place of, oh, wow, that's weird. Like, if you really follow the dots here, like this is a society that's kind of swirling down the drain, and it's in part systematic, in other parts it's symptomatic of something bigger. But at the end of the day, like, you know, we don't talk about this shit just because it's like shock and awe value. It's not coming up next, you know, like we're not looking for that.
Lights himself on fire,
right? Yeah. There's a trend, and it's leading to very egregious and wild like manifestations of people's grandiose last resorts in a lot of cases at varying ages from varying different geographies. It's wild. Like, just think about that shit. It's, you know, it's why we talk about the stuff we talk about, is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a paradigm shift that we're going through socially, where we're starting to see, and these kids are, you know, we're starting to see these young people. And I think a part of it is, you know, on top of all the things that we've already said, but I think it's an apathy that you know, they're never going to be able to buy a house.
Right.
College is too expensive and crazy. I'm on all these drugs and hormones and weird nonsense, and the world is on fire. You know, every day the news is trauma. You know, there's just trauma in the news constantly, and you just get to that point where you're just kind of used to it now. And there was a time frame back when I was a kid, and even when you and I were in our 20s and stuff, where like a big story wasn't even weekly. We get to talk about a big news story for a week or two, and then the next big story would hit. But the normal process of the news cycle was a couple of stories a month. Now it's 4 a day, and it's rapid fire, and it cannot be healthy on the mental capacity of somebody under the age of even being able to really process it due to perspective. So, like, how are they supposed to cope with this when they don't have
fully grown adult, and it's difficult for me to process, like, trauma porn in high definition every time a news story hits the RSS feed, followed by a bunch of self-righteous booger eaters whose head just pops off the pillow in the morning wondering, how can I be part of a victim culture today? Like, it's outrageous, even for me. So to your point, I don't think kids growing up with this, nobody can put up with this type of stuff. The only kids that have a chance are like my kids, who have two parents that openly talk to them about this stuff, give them hope, give them reason. You know, my kids are dedicated to God. They're dedicated to Jesus, and I'm glad that I had at least a little bit of insight and help with that. But their faith and their walk is going to be stronger through their teens and 20s than mine ever was. And so, and it shows in their day-to-day lives. It shows in their actions. Like, my kids like going to church and youth group. They don't want to miss out on it, you know? So, but also they had two parents that were willing to talk to them realistically about what is going on in the world without doom and gloom, without making it seem like it's hopeless. Yeah. There was never a situation growing up where I was like, I wonder if I could turn to the federal government for an answer to this. You know, there was never, Washington, D.C. was not a part of my daily life. You know, no, you never even thought about it. And you know, news stories was like very local to the community that I was in. If something popped off, that's about where it stayed. And then you would get staggered up to, you know, if some national stuff was going on or whatever. You know, it's changed, it's degraded, and while it's degrading into a cesspool, it's accelerating with, you know, technology and the fact that folks are being told that you need to know, and this has to be part of your life, and you have to take a side, when realistically a lot of this stuff is kind of bullshit. I read 3 articles this morning. I've been up since god awful hours of the morning this morning. I think like 3:30. The problem was I could not identify which one was written by AI, generated by a complete zero fact random amalgamation of words and letters with I just guessed at a topic to write a news story about, and I knew for a fact one of them couldn't tell you which one. I had to like go look at the glossary to figure out, oh, this isn't even real. That's how good they're at now. And I knew what I was getting into when I read all 3 articles, just like I get to figure out which one is not current news. Couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
So does this need to be part of everyone's life where you could practically taste the brain matter coming through the late breaking video? It's bad, man. It's real bad. So there's reasons why we talk about this stuff. It's not because we're doomsayers, you know. Yeah.
Or that I think it's funny that somebody lit themselves on fire. Now, do I
have
the
asshole in me says that's a little comical. It's like going out in a blaze of glory.
I'm not going to ignore the fact that it's like, you know.
Like, all right.
But you have to, it's almost the
throwing him an antiperspirant, but anyway.
But you have to, you know, disconnect from it and be able to, like, but even then it takes a toll on the brain, it takes a toll on the heart and the mind and the soul, and little by little it chips away. But in this particular case, like, this guy, you know, I'm sad for him. He saw no other way, or he was pushed into it. Those are the only 2 things, you know? And so that's disturbing that a man of his age, because I mean, I don't think he was much younger than you and I. So like,
he wasn't. He's my age.
Yeah. And so like, you've already lived a good chunk of your life, dude. Like, your future's set. Like, you don't have to really worry about it for the most part, or at least I'm assuming. But a guy of his nature, of his build, you know, like, he seemed like a normal guy.
Yeah, and I mean, circumstances will always be there, but like, I have a directionally accurate idea of how things are going to go now that I'm pushing 40. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure.
A lot of those pivotal decisions were made years ago, and it just hurts waking up in the morning now. But yeah, to your point, like, that's the fabric I'm after, is like, why are we seeing, you know, and I could blame tech in the news and whatever. It's your job to filter what you put into your mind, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, it's very, very small amount of time to take somebody from regular melancholy lifestyle or a child looking to belong somewhere to headline news story.
Radicalization into
exactly wild.
Yeah, and it is wild that the human condition is that fragile from at any age, that it takes very little time to take them from being vulnerable to destructive within a matter of a very brief amount of time.
Yeah, and with such a disconnect on how that affects people that care about you and everyone around you in reality, which is another odd leap to take. But breaking points, it's interesting. This is a weird one. This guy shows up in Seattle at a hotel where he was promised delivery of, I think, a 9 and an 11-year-old girl by their mom. Yep. And he's met with a task force of Seattle Police Department folks, like the To Catch a Criminal.
The guy was retired. He was in his 60s, correct?
Yeah. And this
Older,
is
creepy dude.
Yeah, this is one of those perennial To Catch a Criminal stories. Ends up getting shot lots of times by the Seattle Police Department at the door because of a video that popped up, and I saw 3 different body cam angles of this. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So I don't know if I'm sure it's still bouncing around the internet. But the Seattle Police Department killed this guy. They shot him lots of times. You get to see it on video, which is disturbing enough. I am 100% not going to link the video from this podcast to wherever. You can just look for it if you're interested. Weird situation. I have really gone through the emotional ringer on this one since I saw it like 48 hours ago, 48 hours ago. But take me through what you saw. I want to hear your take on this first.
Okay. I have seen the unedited version.
Yep.
And so basically it was a sting operation. They'd been in contact with this guy for a long time and extensively, and he had every intention of having relations with
extremely young girls.
Extremely young. And was very vile about it and very gross. So they were like, we gotta move in on this. So they set up a meeting, and the video walks through where, and I can't tell. It's like from the video, the perspective, it looks like he's in like a hallway, and they come through a door.
Yeah,
he's meet with him.
He's on a non-ground floor, and the entrance to the hotel room is like, you walk down and then it's all where the wall is. Everything behind you is like layers and layers. There are many hotels in the Las Vegas area that do that, open foyer levels and levels to get to the, so that's the setting. And I don't know which floor he was on, but it was not ground floor, like maybe fourth, fifth floor or something like that.
And there's 2 or 3 officers, I think 3. And they walk through the door, and as they walk through the door, they say his name because they know that he's on the other side. They say his name, and they open up the door, and in a heartbeat of a second, you see the guy reach into his coat, and he doesn't look like he's like, oh no, he's not shocked. He's very slowly reaches into his coat and pulls out a gun and goes to shoot, and just as he goes to shoot, the first police officer like puts his hand on basically the barrel and pushes it, and apparently gets grazed, and then pushes the gun into him, and they all start trying to tackle him. And then before you know it, I think he's got at least 2 officers and possibly a third mag dumping into this guy.
Yeah,
just pop, and then like done. And so I am not at all conflicted on this. I think that for once, and like I'll be really, really critical of cops overusing certain elements of their arsenal, but in this particular case, I'm not losing sleep on it, and I think that it was handled properly, but I could be wrong because I've only seen one angle. If you've seen multiple angles,
I've seen 3, and they're 2 different edits, and that's why I started swinging a little bit. So edit 1, same setting. We'll use my cell phone here. Guy begins to pull a gun out. No, hey, stop. What are you doing? Freeze. 0 commands. A hand gets from an officer in the foreground, pushes right here before he even gets it out. And the first shot fired that I hear is coming from the pursuing officer closest. Then it cuts to the second body cam where one officer's kind of partially down the hallway, and edited or not, we got to take this guy shooting. His form is terrible. He's like sidearm shooting this thing as he's falling down backwards. And I'm like, you're going to shoot the officer closest to the suspect at this point. But what ensues from edit 1 is 2 officers mag dumping in this guy. And I'm like, that's a hit. They wanted to kill this guy. Then you see edit 2, guy pulls gun mostly out, to your point, kind of gets the arm pushed. It's his shot that's fired first, the suspect, which then grazes an officer who's out of frame on the third, and it hits his leg. Then the other 2 officers shoot. Still the guy falling backward shooting with one hand needs help. That was bad because you're responsible for every round that comes out of that gun, right?
Right, absolutely.
He could have killed your partner, both your partners. You could have annihilated all 3. You're in a public spot on an elevated floor. Bullets are whizzing, bro. Like they're picking up shell casings, literally sweeping them up on the first floor. Like they mag dumped on this guy, several dudes. And I'm like, all right, so the perspective is not the ethical turnout. It was, did they intend to kill this guy? Because I saw something that now has a different side to it, which is why you can't really believe what you see on the internet, especially if it's a body cam footage that's made it to the internet. Somebody had to upload that, which means they probably edited it. So just food for thought. Like, look, man, one less predator in the world meeting their end is not gonna, I'm not losing sleep over that, period. That's how I'm wired.
Yeah.
I do believe in due process. I don't think we should just go shooting people. So if the second edit is more closely related to the truth than the first one, I'm probably on board overall, because the guy shot first and they defended themselves, but then kept shooting. Like, I mean, 1, 2, 3 shots, they let him have it. So if that's within their right to let him have it, like, that's between the Seattle Police Department and King County and the constituents that pay taxes there.
Yeah, they can work it out on the back end.
But for me, I went good 2-3 hours like, wow, the cops set out to kill this man, because that's exactly how it looked. Then a bunch more footage started coming up, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's not exactly how that went, because he didn't even get a chance to shoot. They just bang, 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 like 3 of them. Bang, 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 bang. I'm like, oh. Well, and it's savage to watch and then rewatch, where you're just like, but from a truth-seeking perspective, I want to believe, let's say, that he shot first. The guy was trying to prevent him from drawing fully. It only grazed an officer, and they shot a bunch of times. You could tell the guy out of frame, the second body cam guy, was terrified, because he was shaky arming it and then started shooting like this on his way down. And it's like,
those two
bro.
Yeah. Those two things suggest to me, one, that dude was scared and
Very
did
much.
not see what was coming. He didn't realize that they were going to be in a shootout. They thought they were going to cuff that guy and walk out.
He was unprepared and was Wild Bill Hickocking his way down that hallway. And he could have hurt some people, dude.
Yeah, for sure. So he needs some extra training.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yes.
But the other 2 gentlemen who came through the door, the other 2 cops who came through the door, seemed pretty nonchalant about it. Like they were expecting just to surprise the guy. They weren't at the ready. They weren't like kicking in a door and go, get on the floor. Get on the
no
floor.
commands in both edits. That's what I was like, holy shit, they just murdered this guy, because they didn't even try to stop him. But anyway.
Well, they seemed so, when they were walking through that door, they were like talking to each other. They were like, yeah, anyway, we got to get through here, you know? So it wasn't like they were anticipating a firefight. They were actually thinking that they probably didn't even know that he was in the hall. They probably thought he was in the room, you know, because he was out on the balcony thing. So they probably thought they were going to go through the stairwell out on the balcony and then go knock on his door, and he was going to open it up and they were going to arrest him. And he's standing there like, oh, hey, what's up? And then he's like, oh, it's you. And they go, okay, boom, 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 boom. That's kind of how I viewed it. But
well, I imagine that the officers on both sides that were out of frame that you had to get body cam footage 2 and 3 from the initial perspective, my guess would be, tactically speaking, they were probably sent on both sides of that balcony in case he was a runner, and they were going to let the dude behind the door be like, surprise, motherfucker, guess who's going to jail? It's you. And then that's when that probably ensued. I imagine that's why they're out there, but they were very nonchalant, save for the guy on the left who was obviously terrified. But that's me speculating on some shit I don't know anything about, right? All I saw was
I would imagine the guy on the left was the rookie, and he was probably
looked like
positioned. Probably positioned to keep people from approaching. Just in case something happened.
Yeah, catch the runner or keep people away. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, perimeter guy, and all of a sudden, perimeter guy's like.
It looked just like that. It looked just like what you're doing, and I was like, ooh, because. I mean, there's guests in this hotel. Imagine if the story doesn't end there.
Happened that day,
right? Imagine if the story didn't end there. It'd be like, oh, now you're doing the right thing, protecting your guy, but then you hurt somebody else and you lost your job, and like, so my guy needs training. Just saying, training's out there. You should take it. But again, wild shit in the news this week.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've been, we've kind of avoided our, crapping on Seattle kind of talk over the last couple of
sentences,
episodes, but the reality is we need to put this in context, this was in Seattle, and and it happens a lot. And I sent you a reporter guy talking about it, saying like this is becoming a big issue. But
he had a really good statement in there that was like, and this happens so damn much. There's actually a task force assigned to catching guys like this, which is great perspective.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Yeah, there's some sickos out there,
and they're everywhere. So I can't really put this on Seattle specifically, but it just adds to the cesspool.
Yeah.
Also,
I'm not even going to go there. Moving on.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. You want to stay on YouTube is what you're saying?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right.
I think we can lighten the mood with the new chapter from the Gospel by Gen Z. What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Before we break into some additional sentiment. Gather round, children.
I always love this time of the week. I learn.
So we had a holy baby shower, right? We did presentation last week.
Mm-hmm. You need a bookmark.
I know. We did his father's house.
You have all of this.
Here we go.
All of this stuff and not a bookmark in the house.
All right. So you've seen, is it Peter Falk played Columbo? And then he starred as the granddad that reads the kid the story in The Princess Bride. And he's always losing, where was I? And then he's got like his, that's kind of what I feel like right now. I probably need a bookmark. Chapter 8, John baptizes Jesus.
Ooh.
When his cousin John was all blown up, he started going off saying, the kingdom of the top G is at hand. Don't be caught lacking.
Amen.
For if you're sorry for your L's, God will come in clutch with his mercy. But if you keep capping saying you only have W's, NGL, you're playing with your life. Which I think means not going to lie.
Yeah.
So he began to baptize whoever admitted that they were a hot mess before God. And some religious Karens pulled up saying, "Ayo, bro, you think you're goated?" But Holy Bro said, "Nah, fam, I ain't him. The main character will come after me. He is the CEO of being valid. And to be honest, I'm not even worthy to simp for him." The unholy Karens didn't understand the assignment that John was fulfilling the divine duet chain. But many passed God's vibe check and were baptized by him. Jesus also pulled up W with that holy vibe and said, "Bro, baptize me." But John said, "Bruh, are you for real right now? You probably meant to add uno reverse, ? Jesus replied, "Nah, fam, do it for the plot." So John baptized the holy bro, but it hit different. And then in parentheses it says the dove was a paid actor, and there's a little picture of the dove in the image there. Which if you're not watching us on YouTube, you should be. But it's this beautiful artwork. There's a little dove, paid actor, right up there on top.
That's awesome.
It's great.
That's exactly how I remember the story. So.
I'm pretty sure that's how it was spoken too. The translation may be off, old text and all, but like he's getting
tomato.
I say tomato, and that's final. So you got a couple other stuff. You had some local stuff happen. You watched Rebel Moon, which I definitely want to take on.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I had mentioned earlier that I had kind of a weird week, which is why I didn't get around to going over the information about Title IX. But I had been asked a couple weeks ago. Our pastor is currently, and not Jason, our head pastor, so Pastor Paul Vanoy. He is currently in and has been in Israel for 3 weeks. He actually just got back, I think, today. Mm-hmm. So, but a friend of ours who is also one of Pastor Paul's political advisor group, which I'm a part of, she had asked, "Hey, we do the kind of candlelight group, which is a like political group thing," and Erin, my wife, had spoken at this group a couple of times. She's part of it, and it's basically a bunch of boomers sitting around in a room on a Saturday afternoon, kind of going over local news stuff and local politics things to kind of steer community stuff, right? So, and
Wake people up from their rice cakes. What?
yeah. And so I got asked to if I would be interested in helping her as a presenter for some of the Groiper issue, which has been a big talking point, right? And since I'm kind of the authority on all of that information in the area, which the Groipers don't agree with, they think that I'm not, but I am. So they she hit me up and asked me that, and I was like, sure, I'll go spook a bunch of 70-year-olds about the boogeyman that's in town, and give them kind of
vaguely Catholic guised monarchism. Yeah,
right,
sure.
Yeah. So, and I didn't even really think anything about it, and then later on she posted a kind of a digital flyer on social media that also said that it was a legislator kind of meet and greet where they just got done down in Boise,
right?
And 3 of our local legislators were going to be kind of telling everybody, at the cultural impact team, what they did down at the legislation for the session. And I was like, oh, okay. So I've got 3 legislators that I know, that are friends that are going to be there. And then my wife was billed to speak on a couple of local topics. And then she asked if I wanted to be on the flyer. And I was like, nah, just kind of generalize it. Just say, if you want to hear about this. Because I was afraid that my name attached to it would actually draw agitators, right? And so then she asked me if Pastor Jason if I'd be cool if Pastor Jason helped. And I was like, absolutely. We're on the same page. Like, we've already discussed this a lot, so it makes sense. And so she put his name attached to it. Well, the night before, we get kind of a pre-warning from somebody saying, hey, there's talk that that the Groipers are sending an agitator, somebody who says they're just going to listen unless you name names. So it was kind of a threat,
Karen will appear.
Right. And we kind of figured out who it was, and she's a mean little badger of a woman that has become highly contentious in the area, and but she's on board with them, and she's on board with our local central committee. So they love her. She volunteers like a
to preserve anonymity. We will call her Karen.
Yeah, like a coked out jackrabbit. She'll run around everybody's neighborhood and knock on everybody's door, and yeah. So, but little coked out Mormon jackrabbit, and so she so I'm expecting her, and I'm like, oh,
sucks
great.
when you have a visual imagination and you're hosting a podcast.
Yeah. I'll show you pictures later and you'll get what I'm saying.
I'm all in.
I was like, all right, she's going to show up. It's going to get weird because I know her and she can't keep her mouth shut, and she'll pop up with like off-base scriptures that don't really apply, but she tries to, or law that she thinks applies and doesn't, and cite like, well, the bylaws of the KCRCC say at 224, I was like, I'm not part of that. This isn't a courtroom. Calm down, right? So, and I'm like kind of prepping myself for that kind of interaction. And we show up and the room fills. Normally it's 8 people, 10 people max. The room fills and there's like 50 or 60 people in this room.
Dude, you got to think about streaming the next one.
Oh, we got it on film.
Nice.
So I'll send it to you so you can see it. I'll give you the link to the Rumble page.
Yes.
Well, we had 5 agitators show up. The head of the KCRCC and a couple of the other people that are all part of that group, and a couple of local kind of agitator film guy, like local journalist guys.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, man, this is wild. This is going to get ugly. So we took a break before I went on, and everyone's kind of nervous because there's like, we had to get security because these guys were going to cause a problem.
Winter is coming. Yeah.
Right. So we got the legislators out of there so they didn't take any of the shrapnel or got connected to any of this. And we're just like, yep, you guys got to go. They're like, okay. So they left. And then it went fairly well. Like I could either kind of tone this down or I could go full throttle. And it was really hard. I had an hour, so I didn't really know how to encompass what we know as like this giant onion of complexity of what this whole Groyper concept actually consists of, because you're going into theology and ideology and different factions and different players and different political motivations and why the motivations of why they're here. So trying to encompass that into an hour for a room full of people who half of them know or are part of it, and the other half never even heard the word. And so it was really hard to try to navigate. So I did my best. And it then came to, and Jason and I were volleying off of each other, and Stephanie was right next to me, and it went fairly well. And then the Q&A hit up, and of course they're popping up out of their seats. I have a question.
You're sure?
Then, like trying to discredit it, trying to throw it down, right? But it didn't work, and they got kind of stymied at every way. Like
logic tends to do that.
Right. And I had an answer for everything. And if I didn't have an answer for it, because I was just like, like one of them was like, so what's the threat? And I'm like, what do you mean? What's the threat? Like, what's the threat of me talking about it? And I was about to say that. I was like, what is the threat of me bringing it up? Why did it draw 5 of you out here to kind of intimidate us and try to keep us from talking? And why are people getting threats? And Jason ended up picking up, well, let me tell you what, let me handle that. And so we would volley off of each other, and it went contentiously, but well. Sure. And so, but then it was like all of our adrenaline was peaked, and we were, dealing with, waiting for the aftermath, because all of those people always have to get the last word. All the individuals that were involved there, they're all the exact type that cannot handle not getting the last word. So the fact that they didn't, I knew that they were spinning outside, in their back channels and just freaking out.
Oh yeah, and so, all the best rebuttals come 25 minutes after you've been stewing on what you should have said.
Exactly.
100%.
And so then they, we go home and nothing happens, and nothing gets like lit up in the Telegram chats or anything like that. So we're just kind of like, I know that they're up to something. They don't stay silent, So then the following day, yesterday, I get a message from one of the local journalist guys who I'd known for years, friends. Like we've worked together in other things before, and he's a bit of an anarcho-libertarian with leniencies into Groyperism, but I think that's kind of relatively new, like the kind of anti-Zionist kind of fashy kind of feel to him. But what's weird is he hates fascism, but then sides and hangs out with all these guys who are like, no, we're fascists. We love fascism. We want a tyrannical Catholic government, So it's a very weird mixed bag of people. But Casey, I shouldn't have said his name. But he's a good dude. He's just like hates all law and wants basically, he doesn't like cops. He chases them down and videos them and stuff. But then he does a lot of other good work, and then he does some other stuff, like he's super on the the Patriot Front side. He thinks they're a bunch of good boys, instead of feds, and he's just got kind of and he keeps like putting out videos of that he thinks proves that they're not feds, and I watch them all and I'm like, that didn't prove anything. It actually kind of more sealed the deal for me that they are. Right. And so I've kind of taken him with a grain of salt over the probably last year or two, just because he's kind of gone spiraling in those directions that I just don't agree with. Did I think he was an enemy? No, we're very cordial to each other every time we see each other. Until last night, when out of nowhere, because he'd been inviting me to the poker game, which is like the Groyper poker game, and I know they meet up, and then they kind of discuss how they're going to handle certain people within the community to steer them in a direction. So, and there's a cadre of different elements of these people that are a part of this game, and we've all heard about this poker game.
Sounds very Sicilian. Just saying.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and so I've been invited. Early on, I was getting invited because they wanted to turn me and they wanted me to be a part of it, and they thought I was probably in their camp anyway. And then when I kind of gave them the bird, I was like, "No, I'm not a part of your camp, and I don't believe in your ideology, and I will openly say it to everybody."
Okay.
And then it went silent for a while, but then recently, in the last couple of months, out of nowhere, Casey starts texting me saying, "Hey, we're doing a poker night. You're invited. You want to come?" And I was like, "I don't think I'd be welcomed." And
Right.
he's like, "Oh no, they're fine with you. Come on over." And I'm like, "Well, I happen to work on those nights, so
Right.
I'm not going to be able to go. But thank you for the invite." You know, we've been very cordial back and forth. Till last night, I get a text message 2 weeks after the last one, so it was completely unsolicited, and he basically starts off with a compliment of like, "Hey man, I didn't mean to," because we had gotten in a little bit of a tiff on the Saturday meeting because he wasn't allowed to record, which he ended up doing anyway, secretly audio recording after he got told he wasn't supposed to. But it's a public meeting. Actually, it's not. It's a private meeting in a church in a private building.
Right.
It's not the same rules. So, that being said, I kind of thought, I mean, he's the type, he was going to record regardless. And he was sitting there like a teenager who was trying not to get caught with that look on his face while he was just sitting there watching me.
Just full gargoyle, and you know he's got a wire.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I didn't think anything of it at the time because I was like, I don't really care. There's nothing I'm going to say here that I won't completely back, you know, like in fact, I made a big point as to not bringing up names at all. I didn't bring up a single name. I attacked ideology and
probably
not
a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was the point, was like, I don't have a problem with people. I have a problem with ideologies. And if you're following that ideology or trying to impress it upon political action groups or communities, I will point at you and go, "Don't do that." But I don't have a problem with you. I have a problem with the ideology.
Right.
And so, but they love to play the victim. They love to go, "Oh, why do you hate Catholics? Oh, why do you hate me? Why are you attacking me and trying to get me not to work ever again?" Stuff like that. Like, I have to feed my family and you're trying to cancel me. I'm like, no,
I've had one interaction with the greater community.
Yeah.
In a digital forum. Last year, early this year, and just the myriad of responses of, "So you hate democracy?"
Yeah.
So it's, you know, and I laughed because I was like, I love this play. This, you could do a seminar tonight on all the reasons that you're in love with mangoes, and the first comment is going to be, "So you're saying you hate apples?" What?
Yeah.
Totally understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the angle that they tried to pursue through the entire questioning
that has
of it.
Also been my experience.
Yeah. So then I get of an hour later, he's like, "Hey man, sorry," or like, "Hey man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into it with you." And I just
not hating the player, hating the game. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but I was in the middle of something, so I didn't answer him. And so, and I was like, I don't even know how to really respond to this. So I'll think about it later and do it. An hour later, I get the second text message, and it is a full-on threat, like complete 180 change from the previous text of being, "Hey, he literally started the first one out, 'Hey, brother,' you know," and the next text is like, "But if you continue down this path, I'm going to expose you and everyone around you." And, you know, it's like, "So be warned," kind of thing. And I'm like, what? And then he just continued down this path of like, we all see the dangers of Zionism, and you promoting it is very harmful to the community. You shouldn't promote Zionism, and they're evil, and like just went off on this weird rant, and then goes into the Telegram channels that my wife, you know, hosts, and then posts the audio of what the thing said, and like, tattoo artist at church spreads conspiracy theories.
Yeah, like this is the gotcha moment that's gonna just turn civilization's ire.
We didn't even take it down because I was like, "Yeah, go ahead, put it out there when people can hear it for themselves and go, well."
Isn't that a sweet feeling when you're like, "Oh, someone's attacking me. I'm gonna leave it up."
Yeah, doesn't bother me in the slightest. But then I did post. I was like, funny thing is, and because then he like attacked our, he's like, I love the Barnards, but I can't be a part of this Zionism that they're supporting and da 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 da. And then posted the audio, and then so I was like, this is very weird because as of a few hours ago, I thought this guy was my friend, and now, this is what I just received and like screenshot all the text. It was like he's now threatening me which validates what I said in the video, saying if you can pursue this any further, you're going to get exposed. So it validates the fact that what I said in the thing is 100% true.
I love that the vaguely, like, the light veil of Catholicism draped over institutional monarchy is defended by somebody who may or may not understand the words I just said by saying that you are, and I'll read the wiki definition, a part of a nationalist movement that emerged in Europe in the 19th century to enable the establishment of a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. That's what he says your whole talk was about, and why he... Okay. I wonder if his wires are crossed a little.
Well, he's super pro-Palestine.
Those aren't even...
Yeah, right. I know.
Monarchy, Zion.
I know.
I mean, just for the record, you're not a Zionist, are you?
No, like
I didn't get my gotcha moment either. Damn it!
I support the Jewish people in a biblical way that the Bible says to do, and I don't care what type of kind of replacement theology you kind of want to attach to it. That's fine. I don't care. But for me and my faith and what I believe the Bible says, I believe that even if they're not being awesome, we're still supposed to support them regardless. I do believe that Israel and the Jews and all of them are the same people. I don't think that they're different people. I think that they're the same people. I think that that is their historical land and they have every right to it. What I think is really weird is that if not there, where do you want them?
Right.
Like they were
which we
spread
talked
out
about
over Eastern Europe. Yeah. Like where do you want them to go? Like, do you want so give the land back to Palestine, but you don't want to take the Jews into your country? How about you? No, not you either. Okay, so where do we put them? That's the caveat. You don't want them anywhere.
Right.
You don't want them anywhere. You want them gone.
And your ideology necessitates that you get very, very outspoken about that and other peoples, we'll say.
Yeah.
Just take a look at what they're promoting. The Groiper people, which you way more than I have both done at length. It's pernicious. At its fabric, it's pernicious. And it has nothing to do with Jews specifically. It could be anybody. Just ask them.
Yeah.
So where do you go from here?
Sorry. Well, nowhere. So basically, I just put it up there. They really have nothing. So like... people were like, are you worried? Are you worried that you're going to have that, he's going to come after? I was like, no, he can't affect none of them can affect my business. I don't have a political reputation. I don't have any reputation, like I've got my reputation is solid as far as like a dad, a husband, a business owner, a community member. Like I don't even have anything on my like ticket or arrest record from 2007 on. So like I am solid. I'm got no skeletons. Right. And whatever he wants to try to dig up, which I have a feeling he's going to try to dig up like a family member's like online history because I know, but it's going to blow up in their face because when they try to expose it, I'm going to go, yeah, I know. Right. And we get along still and it's fine. It's not a threat at all. Like, so they've got nothing. It's empty threats, but that's the problem that they have with me. It's crazy
how truth promotes confidence that way,
Yeah. So I've got zero like concern about it. But that is also very telling that that's all they got. They're terrified of me because I don't have levers to pull. Like they can do it within the KCRCC. If somebody started talking out there, they could make their lives hell. If they had skeletons in the closet with their wife or kids or something like that, they could, but I don't have any of it. and I'm a tattoo artist, and they're terrified of like coming into the shop. So,
well, it's the expected behavior of the wailing and gnashing of teeth of people that cry and scream. You're saying stuff I don't like, and that's pretty much the basis of what they're having to say, while breaking the rules in a private meeting that were obviously established for you to be like, yeah, I don't care. Like, I'm going to back up all of the stuff that I said then. I don't care that it's out now. I mean,
no,
it's expected behavior.
That's been the reaction in all of the chats. They're like, huh. Well, I actually agree with what Lucky said, and I think it's pretty crazy of you that you tried to out him this way. But yeah, no, I actually agree with that. Right. That's been the reaction of everybody's been pretty much having, other than a handful of their group, right? So, but it's fine. I
would not stop talking about it either.
Oh, I'm not. No, I'm actually putting together a bigger one.
I think as many people are interested in learning what you've been able to show just through, hey, I'm not putting this information up or out or creating anything. I am simply aggregating what exists out there now. And I'm just saying, look at it critically for these reasons, right?
Yeah.
And their frustration and, gnashing of teeth and wailing is for reasons that remain unclear. But until then, this is what could happen if you allow people to influence your political organization, your church, your community in such a way as shown here. Keep talking about it.
They want to frame it as if I'm attacking people, which I'm not. They also want to frame it that I'm attacking the KCRCC, which I'm not. They also want to frame it in the way that I'm attacking the Catholic Church, which I'm not. But then they want to kind of divide it and say it's Democrats versus Republicans, and this kind of archaic boomer kind of way of looking at things, and it's not that at all.
I'd be willing to bet the community of Catholics out there don't have you anywhere near the top of their priority list for threats to the Catholic Church.
Just not even close. Yep. And so, but I keep having to remind them, it's like, this isn't, you're playing checkers, and what you need to realize at the KCRCC, and that it's actually Chinese checkers. It's actually Chinese checkers. It's multiple different factions vying for the same thing. And it's not just the left. It's also coming from other areas. Historically, it's always been that way. It's always worked that way. And that Chinese checkerboard, which I looked into it today, it's actually really weird. The Chinese checkers is actually a Germanic board game from German origins that is in the shape. Yeah, that is in the shape of a Star of David.
Yeah.
And then with the name of one of our more recent and historical communist Axis problems. And so, like, I think it's just kind of
it's the irony I find so ironic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was a fascinating weekend that has spilled over into today. I've spent most of today kind of either laughing or kind of poking the bear a bit in that regard, because they really can't come at me. There's nothing that they can expose me with, because there's nothing to expose. I live a pretty raw life, and I'm very open about everything that I've ever done.
Right.
So, I'm not, I'm a tattoo artist. We love to talk crap about the crap we used to do. And
but it's funny that, like, even the worst person on earth that exposes a good idea to the masses, like, attacking this person's credibility is going to change the factual information that now exists. I mean, even if you were a world-class piece of shit, it's still a pernicious ideology that should probably be not allowed into established political forum. Just saying.
Right. Agreed. It wouldn't matter what my character was. It doesn't take away from the fact that is a absolutely vile and pernicious ideology. And so go ahead. Like, but that's what's weird, is that they're willing to threaten to protect it. They're willing to send 5 goons in,
especially
to intimidate
somebody that you describe as kind of a go with the flow type of character. Maybe not even a main player in the group of
Not at
folks
all.
there. Like,
You're exactly correct on that. Like, he is just not normally a part of that, but he's trying to elevate his journalism to the next level. So he's hitched his wagon to some of these guys because they have national reach.
sure.
Like, you know, he's gotten pretty friendly with Vincent James Fox, who has a national reach, and he's the VP of America First, and and these guys he's on his show all the time, they hang out all the time, and so he's getting kind of journalism prestige and notoriety from being around these guys.
Yes, the New York State subpoenas for President Trump would call that quid pro quo.
Yeah. I'm gonna yell at my. Can you hear my dog barking?
I can hear him.
Yeah,
but intermittently.
Let me put my headphones down for just a second.
That's fine.
I'll be right back.
You can yell at him. We're not live.
Arthur.
Uh-oh.
Knock it up.
More personal information is being exposed right here on the Modern Relics podcast. Hey, look, though, while we're at it, like, we talk about a myriad of things that if you're interested in some follow-up on, because our lives are busy and we don't always get back to the headline of the week after.
Sorry about that.
You're all good. Drop us a line, modernrelicspodcast@gmail.com. We're going to try and spin up some socials soon. I've got to talk to our tech support a little bit more on ironing out future schedules and stuff. It's just a crazy busy time. You could also drop by YouTube. We do live stream this. You can find us at the Modern Relics Podcast. And we're live on YouTube, typically Tuesday evenings, right around 5-ish Pacific time, but no hard commitments. We both have day jobs, you know what I mean? But coming back though, I think just putting a bow on it, there's really not much to worry about, but I do find it gross. I don't even know what other word to use, that folks that you would at least call cordial acquaintances with, if not friends, or at least for a time, would just kind of turn to that for reasons that remain unclear. It's like there are obvious attack patterns, there are obvious defense mechanisms, and there's really no substance to it.
No.
The fact that you have to put up with it is stupid, but it's a gross thing to do. Yeah. Yep.
It is. But it was and continues to be amusing in the regard that that they're trying to go after me, but it's fine. I'm actually kind of the perfect vessel for the message due to the fact that I don't have any they can't get leverage on me. And
right.
So and that I also had the perfect lens for it because these guys kind of live in, like I've said before, in the internet ethos that most are either they just don't have the eyes for it.
Well, it's funny when people threaten you with character attacks and cancel culture when your rebuttal is something along the lines of, yeah, but Twitter's not a real place.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh God, you're going to expose some shit that I'm already an open book about. Oh, okay. That also comes with being a little bit older too,
Well, yeah, but I mean, Aaron and I have already been going through this with there's this fake Facebook page, fake GOP page that is a local scourge, and they'll kind of hunt down everybody's kind of social media and then pick someone to pick on for the day, or
your flavor of the week. Yeah,
right. And Aaron and I have come up multiple times. They've tried to they blasted my whole iCourt history, thinking and calling me a criminal and all these things to the public. And I'm like,
I've sent you social media posts that were disparaging to you and your wife before. It was like, ooh, that's fun.
Yeah. So there's nothing they can do like that. If that's
here's what blows my mind. And I think I know why you guys do it, right? Like why you're committed to being like, hey, this is where we live, this matters to us, and this is the truth, and you guys should hear it because we're just going to speak about it. What blows my mind is that in a place in America that I would have imagined to have been very receptive to messages that you talk about and exposing stuff that you do and bringing to light alternative. Here's the truth. Here's the alternative that you're being presented with. Here's the situation. Why are we doing this? Can we ask some questions? Can we get some information back? I would have imagined where you live would have been the most receptive to all of that. And it blows my mind that even there, the amount of resistance, childlike screaming and yelling and taunting, internet bashing and banter that you've come across when you're earnestly, you and Aaron both, and I study what you put out publicly. I do, and I subscribe to her newsletters, and it's like they're only bringing to light stuff that should matter to the community, and they're catching this much ire in a place I would have imagined would be the easiest to talk about this stuff in. That's what blows my mind. It's like
power and control. We've run into power and people who have.
But do either of you really even seek some sort of power, control, or notoriety?
Not at all. Not at all. And in fact, Aaron has been, by the KCRCC chairman, has been accused of trying to take it over twice. Sure. And it's not even, we've never even run for PC. So we're information highways is what we are. And we want truth to get out.
Right.
And give the information to the right people.
Right.
Which is why I started the Groiper situation. It's very similar to what Erin does, is that she does things where like, hey, do you see what the school's doing with your money? Hey, do you see what the county's doing with your money? Hey, look at what NIC's doing over here. Here's the information to you guys, and do with it as you will.
I would love her take on the Title IX stuff. Just saying.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, maybe we'll get her, her take on that here.
Forward her that
probably watch
fact sheet
this
today.
podcast on the way home. She's in Lewiston.
Well, so don't watch it while you're driving.
Turn
it off.
But it's the same thing with me, is that I got this information and I thought basically I was going to hand it off like a football to people who had leverage and power and
discernment, right?
And discernment,
yeah.
Right? And they'd take the football and then they would go, I don't know what to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
Here, take it back. And I was like, okay. So then I go, let me put it over here now. And no one could do anything with it because they started putting up walls and they wouldn't allow the information to get out or people to actually hear about it.
Yeah.
And so it got pretty ugly. And it has been for 2 years. It's been 2 years of my life of me doing this. And it's so weird because it's like my hobby.
Right.
Like I go down really dark, rabbit trails and rabbit holes of like trying to find like, well, where did this guy live before that? What did he do before this?
Right.
What about this? What is this connection to that? What is this connection to that? What is this ideology? What is that ideology? And going through all of that, and then watching horrible documentaries that they all love, like
right.
Europa, The Last Battle and stuff like that, which is 12 hours of soul crushing, like just, oh man, drudgery of having to get through like the history of how they perceive the world. And it's very difficult to do and it's dark, but it's become kind of a hobby where I'm like, I need to know so that way when I'm standing in front of them like I did Saturday, I have answers. Or that I can write about this and actually come from a source of authority. I know the basic internet trolley stuff, but do I know the ideologies behind it? Mm-hmm. Do I know the writers that they go to, like E. Michael Jones and
L. Ron Hubbard
Taylor, Jared Taylor and all these guys, right? So, and I've got to understand the people that they look up to, certain Catholic priests that are kind of off the farm, so to speak. But
that's what I was saying earlier. The Catholics have way more shit to worry about than you at this point in time.
Oh, yeah. Like no, they don't even know.
They don't even need help being attacked.
The local parishes have no idea. Yeah, the local parishes that even these guys go to have no idea that I exist or that I'm attacking the Catholic Church. But the group, what I call the Groiper groupies, they all accuse me of being an enemy to Catholics. And they're like, well, our state reps are Catholic. Do you hate them too? I was like, no, I don't hate them, nor do I hate Catholics.
Or you, for that matter.
Or you, for that matter.
Right.
I hate this ideology that I'm trying to show you is a dangerous ideology. And they They just don't care. They're like, well, you're just trying to stifle free speech. That was one of the guys who threatened me. That was one of his biggest things is free speech. He kept saying, you're stifling, like while he's sitting there, like it's all protected speech. And I was like, yep, sure is. They can say it all they want. I'm just saying that they shouldn't do it within the confines of the Republican Party because they're not Republicans.
Right.
So therefore, they're lying about who they are, but they can say it all they want. In fact, I kind of want them to stay here and keep all the weirdo, progressive, lefty, insane people busy while we actually get work done.
Right.
You know, so I don't care if they leave. I don't care. Like, they can have their families, they can have their jobs, they can have it, but they cannot dictate policy within the Republican groups. Sorry,
I'm a Republican, not a Republicant. Bam.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
So yeah.
No, but to be honest with you, like, I think it takes a special kind of passion to keep at it, which I have a big amount of admiration. I don't have time my schedule's bananas to chase things to that degree unless, you know, circumstances allow. But the amount of vitriol, the amount of pushback, the amount of walls that have gone up, the amount of football passing back to you that I've seen is crazy to me. So, you know,
yeah.
For what it's worth, man. Good job.
Thanks. And I hate to end it here. My dog is losing his mind.
He's losing his mind.
I cannot concentrate at all.
It's fine.
And
it's fine.
I have a movie review to go over, but maybe we can do it on the next one.
It's a good time to say that because I can watch it probably tomorrow, and then we'll both be on the same page with a take. But I think it's a good time to end here. I appreciate everybody checking us out. Like I said a few minutes ago, feel free to hit us up.
I'm so mad at my dog right now.
He's got dog stuff. I should probably go find some food. We'll just call it here. How about that?
All righty, my brother.
All right. Well, we will see you guys as soon as we can next time. Later.